The school auditorium buzzed with the familiar chaos of adolescence. Chatter and laughter ricocheted off the walls, mingling with the distant strains of music echoing from the practice room. Amelia sat on the edge of the stage, her feet swinging idly as she clutched the silver pendant her grandmother had given her years ago. It was her talisman, a small, intricate charm shaped like a rose. Her thumb brushed over its smooth surface, a ritual she had developed whenever she needed comfort. Today, she needed it more than ever. Amelia wasn't like the other kids at Wellington High. She didn't play sports, wasn't part of the theater group, and didn't belong to the cluster of honor roll students. She was simply Amelia, quiet, observant, and often overlooked. That's why it had shocked everyone when Lila, the school's golden girl, befriended her. Lila was everything Amelia wasn't: outgoing, dazzling, and adored by everyone. Yet, against all odds, the two had formed a bond, one that made Amelia feel, for the first time, like she belonged. But life at Wellington High was rarely simple. Beneath the veneer of camaraderie and school spirit lurked a streak of cruelty, personified by Declan. He thrived on chaos, his sharp wit and biting sarcasm often wielded like weapons. To Amelia, Declan was an enigma. He was Lila's best friend but also her antithesis. Where Lila's kindness drew people in, Declan's cynicism pushed them away. Yet, he had a magnetic pull, a presence that demanded attention even when it was unwanted. The annual talent show was the pinnacle of the school year, a stage for students to showcase their skills and secure their spot in the social hierarchy. This year, Lila had convinced Amelia to perform alongside her. "We'll do a duet," Lila had said, her enthusiasm infectious. "It'll be amazing." Amelia had hesitated but ultimately agreed, swayed by Lila's unwavering confidence in her. Rehearsals became their sanctuary. Lila's laughter filled the room as she coached Amelia through the harmonies, their voices blending in a way that felt almost magical. For the first time, Amelia felt like she was part of something extraordinary. But as the show approached, the whispers began. "Why is Lila wasting her time with her?" someone sneered. "Amelia's going to ruin everything." Declan's comments stung the most. "Don't choke, Amelia," he'd quipped one day, a smirk playing on his lips. "Wouldn't want to embarrass Lila." His words lingered, planting seeds of doubt in her mind. She didn't tell Lila about the comments or her growing insecurity. Instead, she buried them, determined not to let anyone see her falter. The day of the talent show arrived, and the air was electric. Backstage, Lila squeezed Amelia's hand. "We've got this," she said, her eyes sparkling. Amelia nodded, clinging to Lila's confidence like a lifeline. As they stepped onto the stage, the applause was deafening. Lila's presence commanded attention, and Amelia felt small in comparison. Still, as the music began, she found her voice, their harmonies weaving a tapestry of sound that silenced the audience. The performance ended in thunderous applause. Amelia's heart swelled with pride as she and Lila took their bows. But the euphoria was short-lived. Backstage, amidst the chaos of students congratulating each other, Amelia noticed her pendant was missing. Panic set in as she frantically searched her belongings. "It was here," she whispered, her voice trembling. Lila's brow furrowed. "We'll find it," she assured her. But their search proved futile. The pendant, Amelia's cherished talisman, was gone. Rumors spread like wildfire, whispers of theft and betrayal tainting the post-show celebrations. Declan's voice cut through the noise. "Maybe someone didn't want you stealing the spotlight," he said, his tone dripping with mockery. Amelia felt the sting of his words but didn't respond. She knew Declan thrived on provoking reactions, and she refused to give him the satisfaction. Instead, she focused on the growing suspicion surrounding her. Fingers pointed in every direction, but the accusations always seemed to circle back to her. The situation escalated when Declan suggested searching everyone's belongings. "If you're innocent, you've got nothing to hide," he said, his smirk daring anyone to challenge him. Reluctantly, the students complied. Bags were emptied, and pockets were turned inside out. When it was Amelia's turn, her hands trembled as she opened her bag. To her horror, the pendant tumbled out. Gasps filled the room. Lila's eyes widened in shock, her expression a mix of disbelief and hurt. "Amelia, how could you?" she whispered, her voice barely audible. Amelia's protests fell on deaf ears. "I didn't take it," she insisted, tears streaming down her face. "Someone planted it there," but her words were drowned out by the murmurs of judgment around her. Declan's smirk deepened. "Looks like the quiet ones are the most dangerous," he said, his tone laced with mock sympathy. Lila turned away, her disappointment cutting deeper than any insult. The bond they had forged crumbled in an instant, leaving Amelia isolated and humiliated. The days that followed were a blur of shame and isolation. Amelia's classmates avoided her, their whispers a constant reminder of her tarnished reputation. Lila stopped speaking to her, and the loss of their friendship hurt more than the accusations. Even the teachers seemed to look at her differently, their gazes filled with pity or suspicion. Desperate for answers, Amelia began piecing together the events leading up to the pendant's disappearance. Her instincts led her to Declan. His smug demeanor and penchant for chaos made him the most likely culprit. Confronting him was a risk, but Amelia had nothing left to lose. She cornered him in the library, her voice steady despite the anger simmering beneath the surface. "Why did you do it?" she demanded. Declan feigned innocence, his smirk never wavering. "Do what?" he asked, his tone infuriatingly casual. "You know what," she snapped. "You planted the pendant in my bag. You wanted to humiliate me." Declan leaned back in his chair, studying her with amusement. "And what makes you so sure?" he asked. "Maybe you're just looking for someone to blame." Amelia's resolve faltered, but she refused to back down. "You can't hide behind your games forever," she said, her voice trembling with emotion. "One day, people will see you for who you really are." Declan's expression darkened, but he said nothing. Amelia turned and walked away, her heart heavy with unresolved anger. Years passed, and the memory of that fateful day lingered like a shadow. Amelia graduated and moved to the city, determined to leave the pain of her high school years behind. She found a job at a publishing company, where she channeled her energy into her work. Life wasn't perfect, but it was hers, and she was finally beginning to heal. One day, fate intervened. During a company meeting, a new team member was introduced. Amelia's heart skipped a beat as Declan walked into the room. He looked different, older, but his presence was unmistakable. Their eyes met, and for a moment, time seemed to stand still. Declan approached her after the meeting, his demeanor surprisingly subdued. "Amelia," he said, his voice lacking its usual edge. "It's been a long time." She nodded, unsure of what to say. The weight of their shared past hung between them, unspoken but palpable. As the weeks went by, they fell into a tentative rhythm. Declan seemed different, his sharp edges softened by time. He apologized for his actions in high school, admitting that he had planted the pendant as a way to provoke chaos and attention. His confession brought a wave of mixed emotions to Amelia: vindication, anger, and a strange sense of relief. For years, she had carried the burden of that day, questioning her self-worth and replaying the events in her mind. Hearing the truth was a release, but it wasn't enough to erase the pain. "I'm sorry," Declan said, his voice heavy with regret. "I was an idiot back then, lashing out at everyone. You didn't deserve any of it." Amelia looked at him, searching his face for sincerity. She could see the weight of his guilt etched in his expression. "I appreciate your apology," she said softly, her voice steady. "But you have to understand it doesn't undo the damage." "I know," he replied. "I just hope that, maybe, we can start over." Amelia didn't respond right away. The idea of starting over felt daunting, but she realized that holding onto resentment would only keep her tethered to the past. "Starting over doesn't mean forgetting," she said after a pause. "It means moving forward. If you're willing to prove you've changed, I'm willing to try." Their tentative truce opened the door to an unlikely friendship. Declan made genuine efforts to show that he had grown, helping Amelia with work projects and even encouraging her creative pursuits. Over time, Amelia saw glimpses of the person he could be: kind, thoughtful, and supportive. Slowly, the walls she had built around her heart began to crack. Despite this, the scars of high school lingered. Amelia still struggled to trust fully, and Declan seemed to understand this, never pushing her beyond her comfort zone. They fell into an easy companionship, one built on mutual respect and a shared desire to leave their turbulent pasts behind. One evening, as they worked late in the office, Declan brought up the pendant. "Do you still have it?" he asked hesitantly. Amelia hesitated, then nodded. "I kept it. It felt like the only thing that connected me to a time before, everything." Declan nodded solemnly. "It was a beautiful charm. I'm glad you didn't lose it completely." As they sat in the quiet of the office, Amelia realized something she hadn't admitted to herself. Forgiving Declan didn't mean forgetting what he had done. It meant reclaiming her story, her strength, and her ability to trust. The pendant, once a symbol of betrayal, now felt like a reminder of her resilience. Months turned into years, and their friendship deepened. Declan continued to grow, proving time and again that he had changed. Amelia, too, found herself letting go of the bitterness that had weighed her down. Together, they built something new, not defined by their past but shaped by their choice to move beyond it. One day, as they walked through the city after work, Declan stopped suddenly. "Amelia," he said, his voice uncharacteristically serious. "Thank you for giving me a chance to make things right. You've taught me more about forgiveness and strength than I ever thought possible." Amelia smiled, her fingers instinctively brushing the silver pendant around her neck. "And you've shown me that people can change. It doesn't erase the past, but it gives hope for the future." In that moment, Amelia knew she had finally reclaimed the power that had been taken from her all those years ago. Her story wasn't one of defeat but of resilience, forgiveness, and the courage to move forward. And in that, she found peace.